Hey everyone, I'm Tom Seymour with VHS Massacre Radio. This week I have Mr. Tim Coolig. Thanks for being here.
What's going on, everybody?
Yeah, I should call you the Marathon Man, I think.
Oh, maybe half
Yeah,
and quarter,
on top
half and
of...
quarter and 5K. I try to keep the old ticker doing all right.
Right, gotcha.
It's one of the few exercises you can do, and also simultaneously review the music that you've recorded. So it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, well, for those who are watching or listening who don't know who Tim Coolig is, you're everywhere now. I was just on... My wife convinced me to do a TikTok account for VHS Massacre. And so you have tunes on TikTok now. I think one's called Epic Movie Trailer. You got that one on.
Yeah, I had released an album called Pieces of Time a few years back, with not with distro. I'm with DistroKid now for distribution. It was TuneCore I used, but I found their platform and their revenue combination to be expensive. Every year an album would cost you about $45 to renew, whereas DistroKid, it's a flat fee and all the revenue is yours, which is great.
Yeah.
So I kind of had after we finished the doc on Macleod, I had a resurgence of effort that following January and following a conversation with Kevin directly. And I released my first album, Digitalis, in March, I believe, March 15th. Ides of March. And was working on other tunes throughout the summer, but then really kind of started hitting it hard July, August of 2021. And it was a combination of tunes that I'd had kind of in the can already that were things I wrote several years ago, just remastered, and brand new stuff as well. And it ended up just kind of snowballing. I think to date I have about 17 albums released. It was all in the matter of the last 12 months.
And that is over 300 songs at this point, right? It's got to be.
I think the stuff that's officially published is 200 plus in like the low to mid 200s, but I've got at least 60 to 80 tunes in the waiting for other albums and a bunch of other ideas as well. So it's not slowing. It's not slowing by any means.
People in the independent film industry they tend to know about royalty-free music if they're doing any kind of production or post-production or editing or any of that stuff. And that's essentially when you can basically license music. Ideally, you pay a small fee. In the past, you could pay an astronomical amount of money. Because there's royalty-free music for very expensive music, right? Like, if you wanted to pay a one-time fee and not pay any royalties, you would have to pay an awful lot, right? I mean...
Right. What they used to do several years ago even was, people would publish their music and they'd publish a quote-unquote royalty-free, catalog that cost hundreds of dollars. Well, that's a big commitment. I mean, sometimes when you're looking for a piece, it has to have a certain flavor, And even with the relationship I have with Film Music I.O., I'm amongst 35, 40 other artists there. And, I'm fine with the fact that my piece isn't always what somebody's looking for, Those needs and those production needs are very, very unique. So when I find somebody, gravitates towards something I wrote and puts it into, say, a YouTube video or is on a TikTok or something, I'm actually, I'm very humbled by it, and I really appreciate the fact that it spoke to them in some way, and it's now become part of some other piece of art that I never would have imagined had I had that paywall that kept people from exploring and understanding my music. And that's really what I'm trying to do. I want to make sure that there's no paywall and there's nothing keeping people from experiencing what I've created and trying to integrate it into something that is amazing visually,
Well, I think it's a strange thing generationally. Like when, like I teach a video production class sometimes, and when that happens, we always have a dedicated a small lecture to music and the importance of, if you're making a film, you're making a type of product. It's basically, they talk about how film is Roger Corman talks about film as a compromised form of media, in that it's half art and it's half commerce. And so when you're building a film, the music has to be all cleared. And it's a weird thing to try to convince teenagers of, because of the way TikTok and Instagram and YouTube are. It's essentially like, yeah, please steal my music, take my music, and it's because I think it's because the music industry kind of was destroyed, and essentially they figured out that these formats are a way to get listens. But I know on YouTube, if you use someone's song without some kind of clearance or license, if it's not royalty free, if you don't have permission, the video can get flagged, and then you won't. It can be demonetized.
Right.
So
right.
you could spend, 100 hours on making a video, and you use some kind of pop song, and you'll never make a dime on it. And so that's why I try to push the concept of how royalty free music is very important. But frankly, a lot of the teenagers are like, well, I don't care about being monetized, or they're like, I just want to use the song, or I don't plan to do anything with it. So it's a strange thing. I think maybe from people of our generation who are so, especially have been in the film industry and have sold films and have put films out, we have this attachment to the concept of, don't steal music because you'll never get away with it. Make sure everything is legally cleared so that you can have a product to sell. And so, long story short, too late. But for you, was that a hard hurdle to get over, to delve in the royalty-free music arena, when essentially the goal is to give all your music away for free in order to build up the viewership?
The simple answer is no. And the reason it's no is because it's 20, 25 years later. Had I tried doing this in my early 20s, I'd probably be stuck in the route of going the traditional route and trying to push, get somebody to push my, a representation, pushing my music, the guy or girl negotiating, small independent movie projects, some kind of, revenue share deal with like a co-publishing or something like that. Maybe even touring, that kind of thing. A lot of things I didn't want anything to do with back then, and I still don't now. That aspect of the music industry just doesn't appeal to me. Yeah, I'm not some egoist that needs to be in the limelight all the time. I like talking about my music. I like it when people enjoy it, and really, I think this is the best way to get it in the hands of people that ultimately want to use it on the end. I specifically think about people that are low budget, micro budget, or students. I really want to be a go-to for those people, because I know what it's like. I mean, we know what it's like trying to bootstrap a production and, fund it all yourself. I mean, I think you've said that you should never fund your own productions. You know what I mean? You should always find crowdsourcing, or you should always find, contributors to the cause and somebody that's going to bankroll the whole thing. But
in theory,
again,
yeah.
You come back to the commerce, right?
Yeah.
With that, once you get somebody else's money involved with something, like a production, a movie, a short, even, it's compromised, because now your creative license is more than likely not going to be 100% yours. There's going to be an agenda. There's going to be an end result. The person wants their money back and then some. They want it to make money. It's become now a commercially viable production. Whereas if we do it on our own, guess what? This is our expression of art, and this is the story we want to tell. And if it's just a story that we enjoy hearing for ourselves, great. You know, I think it gives full autonomy to the production quality of the project if you just can somehow find a way to bootstrap it and do it yourself.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think to some degree, the pivot that you and I both made to documentary about 10 years ago now, which is hard to believe.
Mm.
But Ken Paul and I started VHS Massacre 1, started shooting in 2012, 2013, and here we are now. And, you did, for those who don't know, Tim composed all the awesome music for VHS Massacre 1 and 2. There's a few Kevin MacLeod tunes in there.
There are.
Which it's hard to talk about royalty-free music and not talk about the king of royalty-free music, Kevin MacLeod, who I think probably we both were inspired by, right? I mean,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There's times even in the movie I state that there's things I could have come up with and spent time on, but again, with the library that he has, there's just this variance of different themes and feelings that just end up working. And ultimately, I'm building towards that level of a library. I don't have 20 years like he does plus of actually producing all that stuff, but I'm playing around with different genres. It's funny. I wrote I think Spotify considers it an EP for some Middle Eastern style music. Picture Arabian Nights and Egypt and that kind of thing, the kind of music you'd think you'd hear from there, sitars and whatnot. And I published that. That was it's August, September, sometime around there, I think. And a couple weeks later, I'm doing some YouTube searches on myself because through the royalty-free, usage, my name's got to pop up and basically give me attribution. And I saw there was a gentleman in the Midwest, I think in Ohio, that used it in a restaurant review, and he had minimal following and everything else, but it was neat how he layered that in to specifically, I think it was like a Iranian restaurant or Libyan restaurant or something like that, and I was like wow, this spoke to him. This made him feel like the restaurant felt, and I'm like, that's really cool. I love it when that happens.
Yeah, that's amazing, and that's another thing I wanted to talk about. Specifically, Film Music IO. For those who don't know, filmmusic.io is a destination if you want very high quality, royalty-free music. Where essentially, in most cases, all you have to do is give credit in the video, or credit on IMDb. And if you can't do any of that, like it's a 30-second commercial spot, you pay I think $30 or $40, right?
Yeah, it's like it equates. It's in euros because it's overseas, mm-hmm. But it equates to about $30. And the artists themselves, I think it's like a 75-25 split or something. So you're giving the artist a good amount of money.
What you've done in the past year or two, I've seen on YouTube every week. There's a handful of new YouTube videos with your music in it. And this week, I looked up, I found two videos, one had 30,000 views, one had 50,000 views. And it's a situation where, whatever you have now, 500,000 listens or whatever, it's clear that if you were to try that through traditional means, it could take you years and years and years to do that. And it looks incredibly powerful. Like your name is already known for royalty-free music. I mean, it's I don't know. Maybe you can talk about that, the power of the internet or something.
It's very humbling because I felt like I was going to make this effort starting in July. I obviously starting beginning of last year, but I really was hunkering down and writing things between March and mid to end of July, you know what I mean? Getting things prepped and then kind of getting a schedule of release dates. And it's probably going to happen similar this year, considering the different genres I'm trying to do again. But what's really, I just let caution to the wind and just said, look, I'm going to release this stuff. I'm going to do it through this venue. It's going to be available. There's going to be no barriers. Use it and push it and enjoy it. And it's something that would be impossible through traditional means. I couldn't possibly spend the time pushing, promoting, trying to get on, playlists and everything else, although I still intend on doing that kind of promotion going forward. It'll be a lot easier when people start to realize who I am and hearing my music and knowing what it is. But there's no way that would happen in traditional sense. And there's people, literally, to speak to YouTube, I released a couple meditation albums last year, and very calm, soothing things. People literally write and produce this whole video that would loop one song for like a half an hour with these gorgeous, visuals in the background, sometimes even putting my name and the name of the song and a reference to Film Music IO where you can get it right into the visual of the thing. I don't have time to do that.
Right.
Because I gave it away for free.
Right.
Somebody's doing it for me.
Right.
They enjoyed it, and like somebody did like some like Reiki video that went on for like 3 hours, and it went through 3 or 4 of my tunes from the Meditation 2 album. It was great. I mean, it was just, the visuals didn't change or anything, but it was all about like sitting there and meditating. And I'm like, yes, this is what I want people to do with this. I want people to enjoy it, and it's getting spins. I mean, like last time I looked at it, I think it was, it was a low, like a low level listen to channel, but I think it's still in the thousands, that people had listened to it.
Yeah.
So there's enough subscribers that they're enjoying the music and they're getting exposed to it. That happens on a scale of 100, 200, 300, and there's a couple that are in the 5 digits or whatever. It speaks to what you said earlier, like 500,000 listens, million listens that have reached that many people. Never reached that many people in traditional terms.
That brings me to what I wanted to talk about next is brand building. So I had a discussion. This podcaster Lou Mavs has this podcast called Music is Life. It's a really, really well done podcast. Really well edited and excellent. We were talking about brand building because he asked me about what is the solution for an independent filmmaker in 2022, and a lot of it I think surrounds something that Lloyd Kaufman said, which was like you have to develop a brand. You have to develop a whole brand so that when people see your social media icon, they know what it is. And so you and I have been doing that with VHS Massacre. I don't have a huge interest in social media, but I think I tallied across the board on all forms of social media, from Twitter to Instagram to my, personal Facebook and the VHS Massacre Facebook. It's about 15,000 followers I have. Mm-hmm. And it's all branded the same. It's all the VHS Massacre branding, and promotes the movies and promotes the podcast. But I noticed you started to dive into the social media aspect, and I don't know, I wonder if you could talk about anything like that in regard to brand building.
Yeah, that's been, I think, one of my largest challenges, and I've been trying to learn everything I can about, the general aspects of it across multiple pieces of social media. Because obviously, between YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, SoundCloud, various
Spotify,
platforms,
yeah,
there's a whole different thing. There's a different approach to each one of them. I mean, I could talk to one person and they'd tell me that SoundCloud is irrelevant, or it used to be relevant and it's not anymore. And then I'll talk to somebody else and they're like, no. For $120 a year, I archive all my stuff on there, and it's a way to push product. I mean, there's anywhere you go, you're going to get bots, and it's very obvious when you're looking at a response or a push or whatever. But then I've gotten reposts on there. I've gotten a bunch of downloads, so people are using it from there. I've looked at YouTube, and I have stuff posting on YouTube using my music, and not all of it's from film music. Some of it's from SoundCloud, and it's a reference to the way that I asked them to reference it on there. So that's how I know that it's working on both platforms. I think film music is more of a go-to because it's been, the foundation of that site, and what Sasha Ende is trying to do with that, and the artists that he, caters on there, is what I believe in. You know what I mean? Which is, give this stuff away, and then, through streaming revenues, through private contracting, through videos that go viral and that have the music in it. There's and then people that can't afford to or can't give me the attribution and need to pay me for it. All those things are going to become revenue streams. But again, I'm not delusional in the sense that, okay, I'm going to release these albums that are going to, like that, they're going to pop, and I'm going to make $14,000 a month. Well, that's ridiculous. People don't know who I am yet. So I know that the social media campaigning is crucial in that, to give the visibility and to create consistency across all platforms. So that's going to be, the next 2 or 3 years, there's going to be a strong focus on that and about fine tuning that. Because I know that there's some, on different platforms, there's a little bit of a different push for this. My website's a little different than that. And I know that all those things have to become homogenous, and it's just going to take some time. And I'm learning as I go,
Yeah, it took me years, honestly, because the podcast used to be New York City. I converted that over to VHS Master Radio, and then all of the other media. He used to have like 10 different Facebook pages for different films. I still have some of those, but I consolidated a lot of that stuff, and it just was. It does take a while. It also takes a while for you to figure out your own brand, to figure out exactly who you are and what you're pushing.
Specifically, I'm writing, 15, 30 second, 45-second pieces that are literally just upbeat intro, upbeat outro, blah, blah, just these things that people need, and just creating a catalog of them that they can choose from, like, that's not quite what I'm like. Ooh, I like this. I'll take that, and just, there you go.
Yeah. Well, what else you got coming out? What have you recently put out, and then what do you have coming out?
I'm looking over my shoulder because I have a list on the wall.
I'm looking at my dream board. No, I'm
kidding.
It
really is. I think, and I can't emphasize enough to people, without going full-blown Tony Robbins on you, that you really need to write down your goals. You really do, because otherwise they're just these pie-in-the-sky things that you're thinking about. But once you commit it to paper, it's a commitment. And what ends up happening for me is that I'll cross off as I produce an album. I'm like, okay, that's my second meditation album. Done. I got that published and produced, okay? But I've got a number of different genres in the pipeline for this year. I plan on doing a couple more horror albums. Those tunes seem to gravitate towards people, and people used a lot of them. It was very interesting to see how people use those. Do another D&D album, which was like a really kind of heavy-duty orchestral thing. Picture like some of the background music and Critical Role, that kind of thing, that podcast. But I've got like a jazz album that's pretty much 75% done, and it's like jazz piano with, cool little bass lines and really, really cool hip drums in the background. But I'm exploring a whole bunch of different things. Cyberpunk, I played 2077 last year.
Yep.
And I followed a bunch of the artists on there, and I've listened like that whole soundtrack album, and it's really inspired me to make some really far out kind of, it's like techno meets, space music is like the best way I can describe it. So I've been exploring some ideas with that, and might make a couple of those. Actually, not might. I have 5 tunes in the can for that already. But it's stuff like that, like just various different flavors. I even have on the docket a spaghetti western album. So
Nice.
I'm
Oh
doing
yeah,
that kind of music,
that'd be great.
like like a whole Red Dead Redemption kind of background thing. Uh,
Yeah, well, that's another angle, right? The whole video game angle. I mean,
yeah,
there's so many applications for music. It's amazing, and it's such an important accompaniment to video. It's
it,
incredible.
what's amazing about it too, Tom, is that every time I try a different genre, I'm I'm pushing my limits. You know, there's pieces I've done that I was really happy with, and I'm like, I never in a million years would have wrote this had I not been developing a catalog that you know uh, showcased my ability to explore those different genres. Now, I'm better at some than others. I can admit that to myself, but at the same time, what people like, I can't really determine. Case in point, I've published things on Film Music IO that people have paid for that I'm like, I almost didn't publish that. I wasn't really into it, you know?
Yeah, there was one like pirate song you did, like Land Ho, I think it was called. And you're like, I don't know, I don't think this is any good. I don't think I'm gonna publish it. And it was like the most fucking catchy, like orchestral, sort of like a fresh Pirates of the Caribbean, but new. And I was like, dude, I was like, you have to stop making judgment calls on your music. It's just like, but especially in the royalty-free space, like just put it out, man. Just put it out because
That's a huge barrier for most artists, I think. You're literally. I would say this about movies. I'd say this about music. I'd say this about performing live. I'd say it about anything where you're exposing yourself. It literally is like being naked in front of somebody. Like you're literally just saying, "This is me, and this is something I created," and you're opening yourself up to being judged or critiqued and whatever, even if you don't ask for it.
Yeah.
And you just have to take that and treat it as white noise and put it in the background because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You're producing things because that's what's inside you, and that's you want to share it with the world. And some people won't gravitate at all to a piece, or tons of people gravitate towards a piece, and you just don't know who.
No, and in a weird way, the YouTube space with your music is a little bit proof of that because. We always talk about your video popped up in some sort of water tank rescue and emergency, and you hear your tune "There Be Dragons" playing, and it's like an event that actually happened where a bunch of firefighters are trying to help people, and whatever that got 50,000 views or something, you're like, what the hell is that?
Reverse engineer that, try to push that on some local government agency that it's the right song for them to use.
Hey, I'd really like you to consider my catalog for this rescue video. Yeah, I mean, it's just preposterous.
Yeah, it's the only way that works is the way that I'm doing it.
Yeah, which I wanted to add too, that royalty-free music obviously means you relinquish control over who uses the music.
Right.
So you provide the music, and then any country can take it. That would be the reason that it would pop up in any country around the world without your consent. That's the whole thing. You don't have control.
Exactly what you're saying. You relinquish control. So I don't have any control over the content or the message that's being conveyed or whatever. And I honestly don't want to. It doesn't have anything to do with me. Again, I'm providing a service that anybody can use, whether you have money, don't have money, are big production house, a one-man band, whatever. It's there for the user.
So I wanted to talk about so you did the score for VHS Massacre 1 and 2, and the Blu-ray came out, and so the Blu-ray hits #1 on Amazon. I think it was January 18th. It hits #1 Blu-ray documentary, and then I think #3 bestseller. Did you ever think that was going to happen?
Considering what we were talking about in those two movies, that's the last thing I expected to happen with a physical media item. Granted, it's going to stream and or it may even, is it streaming? I forget. Or is that
Probably next year. VHS Massacre 1 is on Prime and Troma Now and probably Mubi still and a bunch of other cool ones. But part 2, you can only get it through Blu-ray.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very smart thing to do, is have a specific window. Because it crushed the film festival circuit, whatever, 30 or 40 official selections, 23 wins for that movie alone. But once that film festival window was closed, then the Blu-ray window opened, and now it's only Blu-ray, and it actually seems to work.
Well, traditionally, if you go rewind the clock 25, 30 years ago with the video store industry, what would happen is it would start in the theaters, and then oftentimes it would be on demand, right? There'd be like a 30, 60, 90-day window on demand where you have to pay for it via the cable providers. And then if it wasn't sell-through, it was direct, to a video store, and they paid upwards of $50, $60, $70 a copy. So there's a revenue with that. And then ultimately, once it wasn't a blockbuster, everybody wanted it in their homes right away or available for purchase around the holidays, then it becomes sell-through, which I'll define as, that's where you can buy it at Walmart, at Target, whatever, at a price that the public can afford, as opposed to this industry standard price where the studios get this bump in value for the luxury of you being able to rent it and view it. Which that's pretty much gone now anyway. That price point.
Well, on the subject of physical media and whatnot, the weirdest thing is that apparently Best Buy, I think Target as well, and definitely Walmart are gonna rotate out their physical media. Mm-hmm. So they're gonna stop selling. They're gonna reduce it. I can't imagine they still wouldn't carry like Xbox and PS4 and PS5 games. I can't imagine that, but.
Yeah, the game industry seems to be a place that people still gravitate towards the physical discs. There's something about that third party, not as much, I think, with GameStop, because the value you get trading in at GameStop as opposed to going on Amazon Marketplace as a third party seller, you can get such a better deal, with your physical media with that. And they hate that, which is why they tried to push their next gen systems as fully digital. But the industry, not the industry, the public, lashed out and retaliated and said no.
Because what has become very clear is that it's like you never waste a good opportunity, and the opportunity is when physical media goes away. Those video game companies and the Sony and Microsoft, they can make the worst fucking deals imaginable. So when you buy a game, you really license it for 2-3 years, and they don't if you think about how bad it is now, once they have total control over the licensing agreement and you don't have a physical thing that you could bring away and keep, then essentially they can make because it's a monopoly, they can make the conditions as terrible as possible, so that if you and I buy a game once, 5 years go by, we don't have it anymore. Sorry, you have to repurchase this, or sorry, the next generation has come out and you can't play this. And I know the pushback to that. Pushback is a lot of the times when you're buying a game on a disc, it's 25% of the game, and then you have to download the rest.
Right. There's patches. There's day one patches. There's the first 60, 90 days is all about the error reports that come back and the additional patches for that. It's funny. Games are very consumable, and consumable in the sense that, unless it's a phenomenally engaging game, like for me, like Fallout 4, I don't typically go back and play a game more than once. right? Especially like an RPG or something like that. I've committed,
Yeah.
you know, dozens of hours, if not, 100 plus in, say, like a Horizon Zero Dawn or something like that, and explored the whole landscape. I've had that experience, and it was enjoyable, but it's gone. It's over, and I have the memories of it, and I'm going to move on to the next experience. And I'm starting to evolve. It's probably age related. That I'm not as gravitating towards feeling like I need to continue to have, say, quote unquote, license to that in the future, only because it's paid for itself 100 times over. I mean, think about what it costs for those $50-$60 for a brand new game. If you get day one game, like I bought Horizon Forbidden West for $69, right? I'll probably play it for 150 hours and enjoy the hell out of it.
Yeah.
And it's worth every penny to me because the amount of gameplay, the amount of enjoyment you get out of it, the amount of just replayability, it's amazing. It's amazing what they cram into a game as opposed to 10, 15 years ago,
It is incredible. We talk about both of us finished Far Cry 6, and it's such an immersive experience, and it's that first person experience, and we co-op, we play together, so it's like a shared online experience, and it's really pretty incredible. But I do have to say, I am the personality type where 10 years from now, if I wanna fire up the old PS4 and put in a disc, I do want to be able to play the things that I bought,
Yeah.
So I think that upsets me, because we've talked about this as beating a dead horse, but even films I permanently purchased on Amazon, some of them were deleted out of my permanent library, and I had to write email. So I had to email Amazon. So why'd you do that?
Yeah.
And they restored the title, but it's because it rotated off of their Prime, or they pulled it. It was one of those films they deleted because they didn't, like what was on there or whatever. Someone complained about it.
It didn't fit their, whatever their library mission was anymore, right?
Like they wanted it. They didn't want low budget, micro budget stuff on there. They wanted to compete with Netflix and Disney Plus, so they want pristine looking stuff. So they don't want to see like a gritty horror movie or something like that. Or it's me. I much prefer to watch that than a lot of the crap they produce. But speaking of that, so Mark of the Beast. Actually, let me start that over. So I'm working on a project. It's going to use your music, and it's called The Exorcism of Fleet Marish, and it's like I'll call it a new version of a film. We'll just leave it at that. But it's essentially like a horror film, black and white horror film, and so I'm using your tunes on it. It's actually been very, very satisfying to drop in a few of your horror tunes in there and see how it changes the scene. So you had a few horror albums out, right?
Yeah, one was a combination of some legacy items I had written over the course of maybe like 10 years, right? For various projects, or just because it was something that came into my head, But then recently, this last fall, I wrote an album called Petrifications, and it was actually featured on Kevin MacLeod's website on his main page. He enjoyed it a lot because it's from him saying specifically to me, he's like, I can't explore this space, but I can appreciate it, and I really appreciate what you wrote, and I like this one in particular. He's like, if you want, I could do a little thing on it. I'm like, oh, that'd be great. I appreciate it a lot. So I've gotten a ton of traffic related to that album, specifically Edge of Forever, one of the tunes on there. It's gotten a ton of spins on SoundCloud and a number of downloads and uses and things. It's the primary song that people use from that horror album, just because it has so much exposure,
Yeah, and you were actually featured on MacLeod's website, the legendary Incompetech, right?
Yes.
That's pretty cool.
We speak earlier about being homogenous and having a brand and everything else, and it's, you still go to that site and it still has right in your face the graph paper, People still know what it is. You know what I mean? It's funny. He seems to be able to usurp all that because of his legend. You know what I mean? His history.
Yeah, if you don't know if you don't know the legend of Kevin MacLeod. Anyway, there's the documentary Tim and I created is on if you look up Hunter, IMA, and then MacLeod, MacLeod.
Yeah.
You'll come up. There's a film that when I did my MFA, the thesis film is about Kevin MacLeod, and in it they talk about. Multiple people are like, "What's the graph paper about?" And it just so happens he was giving away customizable graph paper as well, which ultimately people use for tabletop gaming a lot, which was also absolutely fascinating. And I got lucky with Greg Kistner, one of our old friends from Black 20, actually knew what the hell. Like, he used graph paper a lot, for his tabletop gaming, for Dungeons and Dragons and stuff. And I was like, oh, good, so he talked all about that. It was pretty hilarious. Yeah, so that's about all I have. Yeah, Tim, so I don't know. What else? Any final thoughts? Any final promotions? What's your Twitter and Instagram handle and all that?
Yeah, Instagram. I think Instagram is synonymous with Twitter. It's Tim Coolig Free or Tim Coolig Free Music. Any one of those should bring up who I am. And I'm going on a campaign this spring of, now that I've produced so many albums and I have a bunch of tunes out there, I'm going to start doing a kind of like a feature, once a week, that gives people and the people that have gravitated towards my music an idea of where it came from, why I produced the song, some of the inspiration maybe, and also, reinforce the fact that, follow me and let me know what you're looking for, and I can pivot and, start working on that kind of thing. Because ultimately, this whole journey is about providing something that people need. I don't want to write a bunch of, techno music that nobody needs. Like, there's plenty of techno music. I need big band music, or I need, elevator music. Sure, I could do elevator music. I did that for a couple of projects that we did, and I thought that came out pretty good.
Yeah, Tim. Thanks for talking with me. This is VHS Massacre Radio, and we'll see you next time.
I'll talk to you soon. Thanks.